Hello. Are you so excited you cannot stand yourselves? I know. I feel the same way about you. Oh my gosh, welcome to my channel. Tales from the Tomb. I know. It's fabulous. My name is Amy Andrade. Thank you for coming to the channel. And this is where I tell you true stories from the tomb. And sometimes they're weird and sometimes they're awesome. A lot of times they're both. Without any further ado, if you like this content, click the subscribe button. Let's get started, shan't we? Okay, guys, today I got a doozy. And this one comes from Key West, Florida, so you already know it's gonna be like, right? Let's introduce our characters. Yeah, I have these things laying around my house. Okay, guys, this is Carl Tanzler. All right, Carl, he migrates to Key West from Germany. And like a lot of people realize when they get to the island of Key West, Florida, you can be anything you want to be. So Carl, he decides, I'm going to be a count. So he calls himself Count von Kossel. A self-proclaimed count, tells everyone he has 9 collegiate degrees. Okay. What he is the X-ray technician at the hospital. Okay, enter character number 2. Now this beautiful lady, her name is Elena Milagro Hoyos. She is from Cuba. She is sick. And her family, they have no idea what's going on with her. So they decide they're going to bring her from Cuba to Key West. Now, she goes to the hospital. Enter where they meet one another. Okay, now Carl, oh man, finally, right? He has been waiting for her. According to his memoir, which I have read way too many times because it's absolutely fascinating and it'll blow your mind, and I'm super nosy. So, anyway, he's been seeing her in his dreams since he was a kid. According to his own words, his ancestors, apparitions of his family members, have been showing him visions of Elena. This lady, this is his wife. He knows exactly who she is. So, even though she's just been diagnosed with tuberculosis, even though she's super sick, he starts doting on her and giving her presents. So he's showering her with flowers and dresses and jewelry, repeatedly asking her over and over again, marry me. Marry me. Now, can anybody see what one of the problems might be? So Elena, in this photo, she's like 18. Carl is older. Okay. Sadly, where the story is super sad, Elena does die of tuberculosis. Now, guys, the date is important because she actually passes away a few days before Halloween, the year 1931. Now, Carl is devastated. Clearly, her family is devastated, but her family is a little poor. So Carl convinces them to let him take care of the burial arrangements, and take care of her he does. He builds for her, at the time, the largest mausoleum in the Key West City Cemetery. And conveniently, he has the only set of keys. Now, every day, he goes to this mausoleum and he sits on the bench right outside the mausoleum and he talks to her. And he asks her how her day is. Elena, how was your day in the afterlife? My day at the hospital was fine. Until one day in 1933, 2 years after Elena has already died, she finally does what he has been waiting for her to do. She answers him. And she says, Carl, take me from this prison, my tomb. Oh, yes, girl, what has been taking you so long? So under the cover of night, with his little red wagon, from his own words, guys, get his memoir. It's amazing, right? He puts her dead body in a little red wagon and he takes it out of the Key West Cemetery, right? So yeah, he has to open the mausoleum, he has to open the casket, put her inside, and then he pulls her. Wait till you see this. I can't make this stuff up. See, Tales from the Tomb, they just give it to me. They just hand me this stuff, right? He takes her poor dead body and reinterrs it in the cockpit of this wingless airship. Elena's airship. Duh, of course that's where she's going, right? Now, this is so strange for obvious reasons, but to reinter somebody means to put them back into a grave or a final resting place. To disinter, because you need to know this term, to disinter means we're taking someone out of the grave, okay? So he reinters her into the cockpit. And this is so convenient for Carl because this airplane, this airship, it's at hospital grounds. It's sitting at the hospital. How convenient. He can go and have lunch with her. So I guess, I'm assuming he just climbed his little skinny self right up those big tires and he sat and he had lunch with Elena almost every day. According to his memoir, in this airship, while it was parked at the hospital, is where he and Elena have adult interaction. Inside the airship. She's been dead now over 2 years. It's hot in Key West. This is a metal box sitting on the beach. There's no air conditioning in the airship, right? So now the people at the hospital, they're like, Carl. Now, of course, guys, like no one has any idea what's going on inside the airship, right? But they're like, Carl, your airship, like, oh, right? Like, move it somewhere else. Like, it can't be here at the hospital. So with Elena still inside the cockpit, he tows it across the island of Key West to a beach called Rest Beach. Well, she won't go to rest in peace there either. We're on a beach. We're in Key West, Florida. What year is it now? Like 1934. People are climbing all over this thing. Like, this is so weird. This is cool. Like, let's get a picture with it. And Carl at this point is like, oh man, someone might catch wind of my little secret. So Carl decides, all right, man, I should probably take her to my house. Okay, which all of you should be thinking the same thing. Why didn't you take her to your house in the first place? Weird, right? So he does. He takes the body out of the airship and he takes her home. Oh, it's so romantical. Okay, but when he gets her home, ooh, there's things. Like, there's lots of things now. It's almost like 3.5 years. She's been in a metal box sitting on the beach. And Carl realizes, like, oh man, like I need to really do something with her because it's a lot. So he goes and he gets piano wire, and he restrings her together, like her body back together so she can bend. Basically to make her bendable and posable. And at this point, she kind of like flattened out because everything's decomposing and rotting. So he restuffs her body with rags to kind of give her back that womanly shape. Gets plaster of Paris and mortician's wax and he rebuilds her skin. Yeah. And then he gets hair, her own hair, right? And makes her a new wig from her very own hair that he got from her mother. Now, guys, I'm not exactly sure how that conversation sounds. Excuse me, do you happen to have some hair laying around your house that you could part with? Moms, you don't think you would be like, Anyway, then her eyeballs are rotted out. So he has to get her new glass eyeballs. All the better to see him with. And then, guys, he dresses her in a white wedding gown. And in a private ceremony with absolutely nobody in attendance, these dreams, these wishes and desires, these visions that he's had since he was 8, they finally come true. Lays her in his bed in a white wedding gown. And in a private ceremony with no one in attendance, he makes her his wife. Muscle tough. Now, do you know they live like that? Well, fine. She's not alive, but he's alive. And he's alive and she's dead like that for 7 more years. 7 more years. And most people think that he probably would have gotten away with this, except for he gets a little brave again. He's downtown in Key West. He's buying jewelry and dresses and perfumes. And no one's ever seen this guy with a living woman. And people also claim that he had an old car. And he would put her in his car at nighttime and drive her around the island. Then, I think this was probably the straw that breaks the camel's back. One night, some little boys up way past their bedtime, they're peeping into the Count's window. And they rush back to their mom and they're like, Mom, you know that dude? Creepy Carl? Yeah, he's in his house dancing with the life-size doll. Now, these rumors and sightings, right, they get back to Florinda. Now, this is a picture that I love so much because you can hear a lot about this story and you can Google a lot about this story, but this was a gift to me from a local friend of the family, of the Hoyos family. Okay, so this is the craziest, coolest picture. Guys, what you are looking at is this is Elena Hoyos when she was a little girl, and this is her baby sister, Florinda. Okay, so now obviously this story takes place when they're much older, but Elena is gone. Florinda is the one that hears these rumors. Florinda is living in Key West. So she is like, right? So it's that like whole like family gut hunch when you think you know something. So Florinda, she goes to the Key West Cemetery and she's like, hey, can you open up that mausoleum? They open it up. Open up the casket. There is no Elena. Florinda knows exactly where her sister is. She remembers this Count and his like super weird affections and obsession with her. So she goes across town. Now the story says she dang near beats his door down like bam, bam, bam. And the Count, he does something so shocking. He opens the door. As he opens the door, he says, oh, Florinda, my dear, come in. Come in. My wife and I were just sitting down to dinner. With extreme trepidation, Florinda enters the house. And guys, she finds exactly what she has been looking for. She finds her sister waxed and wired in a white wedding gown. At this point, 9 years after she has died. So, she calls the Key West Police Department, which all of us would, right? The Key West police show up and they haul him off to jail, obviously. So let's talk about the charge. The charge is grave robbing. Okay. Now, Carl was taken to jail, and basically over the next 3 days, they appoint these 3 psychologists, like psychiatrist guys, to figure out like what is going on with Crazy. Over those 3 days, Carl is telling him and telling these guys his tale. Like, I loved her. I don't know what the big deal is. I've been seeing her in my dreams since I was 8 years old. This is my wife. Love, 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 love. This is a love story, by the way, right? So it is decided after those 3 days, those 3 men unanimously, that means all together, all of them, they decide the exact same thing. Carl Tanzler, he is 100% sane. Aw, he was just in love. And guys, some of you watching this this channel right now, love can make you do some crazy things, right? Don't do crazy things. Don't dig people up. It's just good advice, right? So Carl, he's going to stand trial because he's 100% sane. Where's Elena? Right? For those of you who are getting ahead of the story, where the heck is Elena Hoyos? So now Elena, she's preserved pretty well. And the local funeral home in Key West, the Dean Lopez funeral, which is still in business today, right? They decide Carl did a great job. Maybe we should put her on display. Stop it. If you have a weak stomach or you're like one of those people that don't like these things, turn your face away now. This is a real photograph. 6,000 people over the same 3 days while Carl was getting his evaluation. 6,000 people lined past the waxen face of Elena Hoyos. They paid 10 cents a piece. They let school kids out of school early to go see Elena. Now the family's sad, right? We still have Florinda and Florinda's husband. And this is where different theories start to emerge about this story. But I am going to tell you the theory that I know is the real one, okay? Her family, so distraught, so upset, so terrified that Carl is going to get her again, or God forbid, something worse than has already happened to this poor woman, right? Her body anyway. They're so afraid that they decide to take her, guys, and they divide her poor body into 3 pieces. They take their piece of the body and they line it basically in a satin-lined white box. 3 men in the city of Key West each take a piece. The police chief, the town mayor, and the fire chief. And guys, on a stack of Bibles before God and the citizens of Key West, they swear they will never tell anyone where their piece of Elena is buried. To this day, no one knows where Elena Hoyos is buried. If you hear a storyteller or a local historian in Key West tell you they know where Elena is, that is not true. Okay, so now Elena, oh my God, poor Elena, right? What happens to Carl? Because this is a long story. We're like 25 minutes into this thing, right? So where's Carl? Well, Carl has to go to trial, right? So all these people show up for his trial. And of course he does what Carl does. He's telling his story to everyone, to the judge, anyone that'll listen. I love her. She's my wife. I've been seeing her since I was a kid, since I was 8 years old. Words, words, love, love, right? And he says, I don't know why everyone's mad about it now. Do you know no one said anything to me for the last 7 years while we've been living together on this island? And then the judge does something very, very surprising. Bam! Takes his gavel, smashes his desk, case dismissed. What? Carl Tanzler, you are free to go. Bailiff, see him out. What just happened? He just admitted in open court to everyone. He had Elena for 7 years. Guys, his charge was grave robbing. Grave robbing has a statute of limitations of 2 years. Now, for those of you that don't know what a statute of limitations is, it's the time that can go by while you can still technically be charged for something. And at this point, that time had expired. So Carl is free to go. What else could they have charged this man with? You're all thinking it, especially the super weirdos. Listen, I know this crowd, right? You're not new to me, okay? You know what I'm gonna say. They could have charged him with necrophilia, aka desecration of a corpse. Get ready. Get ready. Necrophilia is not illegal in the state of Florida. Are you learning something today from this YouTube story time? Because I hope you are. So he doesn't get his wife back. He's free to go. He cannot stay in Key West because everyone knows, like, wow, they know exactly what he is. So Carl has to leave Key West. Now, do you remember that beautiful mausoleum, the largest mausoleum in the Key West cemetery? The day that Carl leaves Key West, that beautiful mausoleum, it mysteriously explodes. and nobody knows who did it. We know who did it. Carl did it. So now Carl, like, he's got to go somewhere. So he packs up all of his stuff and he heads to Zephyr Hills, Florida. Yay, it's where would they get bottled water from, right? Zephyr Hills. That's why that water tastes so weird, right? So he's in Zephyr Hills, and when he gets to Zephyr Hills, you'll never believe who's there waiting for him. His first wife and a kid. You're hearing this story right. This entire time he has been married to Elena and doing all the things with Elena. He's had a wife and a child in Zephyr Hills this entire time. So he gets home and I guess, like, where have you been? I don't want to talk about it. Right? And Carl, he's still not done with Elena. This has gotten him a lot of, like, notoriety. He's like weird guy famous, right? So he starts making postcards and selling them to tourists in Zephyr Hills. He's making little figurines. You guys, what I'm about to show you is awesome. He writes a book called The Fantastic Adventures: The Secret of Elena's Tomb by Carl Tanzler von Kossel. This, my friends, is one of about 33 copies known to man. And I have one. I know. It's amazing. Anyway, so now Carl, how the story ends, because everyone is like, wow, it's a never-ending story. When they find Carl Tanzler dead in his house in Zephyr Hills, right? So now we're in the 1950s. So this is like a long playing out story. They find Carl hunched over a giant life-size wax statue of Elena Hoyos, a wax effigy. Some people like to think that it might have been Elena herself, that he bribed those people and got her body back. That's not what happened. No. He made a giant wax, life-size sculpture statue, and he died with it in his bed. How about that for a tale of the tomb? Carl Tanzler. The end.